Welcome to Unveiled Confessions, where the most raw and shocking confessions are revealed. I'm pushing for 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference. Hit that subscribe button and be part of the journey. You won't want to miss what's coming next.
I wasn't really feeling the whole dating thing anymore. After a bunch of dry chats and even drier meetups, I kinda just let my friends set me up this time. They promised he was normal. Not a model, but not a creep either. So I just said whatever and went with it. We met at this quiet Turkish restaurant near some random shopping outlet, the kind of place with fake plants in the corners and dim lighting that made everything look orange. He was already there when I arrived, sitting straight like he was posing for a school photo. He stood up when he saw me, gave me this overly wide smile, and offered his hand like we were closing a deal or something. It was a little weird, but not enough to make me bounce right away. Dinner wasn't terrible. He talked a lot, like a lot. Mostly about his job and how people at work didn't get him, which I brushed off. Everyone complains about their coworkers. But the way he described stuff, I don't know, it just felt like he was constantly trying to sell me something. Like he was performing, not just talking. I let most of it go in one ear and out the other while poking at my rice and chicken. After we finished, I checked the time and mentioned I'd call an Uber. He looked kinda offended. Said something about how he's not the kind of guy who lets a woman pay for her own ride. I probably should have pushed back, but I didn't want to start drama in the middle of the parking lot. His car was this old, boxy Honda with dents down the side like it had been in a fight and lost. The inside smelled like one of those super strong pine air fresheners that just make it worse. I got in and reached for the door handle out of habit just to adjust the lock or whatever and realized it wasn't there. No inside handle. Just a weird hole where it looked like one used to be. I stared at it for a second, then looked over at him. He noticed. He laughed. Said the door was broken but that it wasn't a big deal and he'd take care of me. I laughed too, kinda. Just a small awkward one. But my stomach felt off, like when you leave the house and realize you forgot your keys but you're already halfway down the street. The drive started normal. Quiet. He had some weird lo-fi music playing that didn't match his personality at all. Like elevator music but trying to be cool. He kept glancing over at me. Not saying anything, just staring every few seconds like he was waiting for something. I tried to focus on the road outside, but it was dark and the windows were kind of foggy. Then I realized we weren't going the right way. I didn't live far. Maybe 15 minutes tops. But he took this turn that led out of the city and into the back roads. I asked where we were going, just casual, pretending like I was clueless. He said he knew a shortcut. That was when my hands started sweating. I grabbed my phone and checked the GPS, pretending to scroll through text. We were nowhere near my place. Like way off. I looked over and asked again. He just smiled, didn't even blink. He said something about wanting to talk more without distractions, that he liked the quiet. At that point, something clicked in my head. I kept staring at the broken door. No handle. No way out unless he let me out. We passed a field. A junkyard. A gas station with one flickering light. Nothing else. I started thinking about the dumbest things, like the fact that I didn't tell anyone where I was going exactly. Just said I was on a blind date. That was it. The road kept getting darker. Trees on both sides now. No more street lights. Just the glow from his dash and the occasional pair of eyes reflecting in the woods from God knows what animals. Then he slowed down. Pulled off the road. Just stopped. He leaned back and looked at me like we were about to start some deep heart-to-heart. I couldn't move. My hand was on my phone, but I didn't want to be obvious. I had no idea what was about to happen, but every part of me was screaming to get out. He said something I didn't really hear. I was too busy trying to unlock my seatbelt quietly. My eyes darted to the lock on the door. He hadn't even locked it. Probably thought the missing handle was enough. While he kept rambling, I leaned over like I was adjusting my shoe. Then in one motion, I yanked the lock up, shoved the door open, and threw myself out. I hit the ground hard, scraped my arm on the gravel, but I didn't stop. I ran. I didn't look back. I could hear him yelling my name like this whole thing was just some weird misunderstanding. But I didn't care. I ran toward the flickering gas station light we'd passed earlier. I didn't even know how far it was, maybe a few minutes back, but I ran like it was the only thing keeping me alive. When I got there, the place was empty except for this older guy stocking shelves. I burst in like a maniac, totally breathless, eyes wild. He looked at me like I was crazy, but I didn't care. I just pointed outside and begged him to call the cops. The guy in the car didn't follow me. By the time the police showed up, his car was gone. I gave them everything, his name, the restaurant, what he looked like. But nothing really came of it. They took my statement and told me I did the right thing getting out when I did. I don't know what he was planning. Maybe nothing. Maybe something really bad. But I still think about that door. That stupid missing handle. And how a tiny little piece of plastic might have been the only reason I'm still here to tell this. I matched with her on one of those newer dating apps people use when they're tired of the usual ones. Less filtered selfies, more random questions like, what animal do you trust the most? And what's your dream kind of revenge? Stuff that's supposed to spark deeper connections, or whatever. Her name was Kyra. That's all it said on her profile. Just Kyra. No last name, no socials, no mutuals. But her photos stood out. They weren't selfies, more like film stills. She was sitting on a bench in one, standing next to a broken piano in another. Nothing revealing, just kind of intense. Her bio just said, ask me something honest. So I messaged her. I said something dumb, like if she could only eat one sauce for the rest of her life, what would it be? She responded a day later with just, hot mustard. Ew. After that, we talked for a bit. Her replies were weird, but not in a way that made me want to stop. It felt like she was messing with me but still paying attention. She'd dodge questions about what she did for work or where she lived, but then randomly tell me about a dream she had where her teeth turned into light bulbs. Stuff like that. She asked if I wanted to meet. Said she'd pick the spot. I showed up to this old Italian place that looked like it hadn't changed since the 80s. Dark red booths, fake grapes hanging from the ceiling, and some waiter in a tux that looked annoyed from the moment I walked in. I almost turned around. It felt like I was walking into someone else's memory. She was already there, sitting at the back in one of those corner booths where both seats faced the same direction. I expected to feel awkward, but she looked up and smiled like we'd met before. Not big or cheesy, just enough to make me sit down without thinking twice. We ordered. She didn't look at the menu. She just told the waiter she wanted the usual, then looked at me. I had no clue what that meant, but I asked for pasta and a drink just to get it over with. The small talk was barely a thing. She wasn't interested in the normal back and forth. She'd ask questions like, have you ever lied to someone's face and they knew? Or, if someone told you something awful but said it was a joke, would you still think about it later? Like out of nowhere. I answered because it was easier than not. I don't even know how much time passed before it happened. The food hadn't come yet. The drinks had just been dropped off. She reached into her purse slowly, like she was about to grab gum or a mirror or something. But instead, she pulled out a black pistol and set it down next to her plate. No warning, no explanation. Just placed it there like it was a napkin. I froze. My hands were still in motion, about to take a sip, and I just sort of stopped midair. She looked at me totally calm and said something casual like it was normal. Something about how she never goes anywhere without it. Said it like she was commenting on the weather. I thought she was joking at first. Like maybe it was a fake gun. A prop. But it looked real. It looked heavy. And she didn't laugh. She just stared like she was watching my reaction for some kind of test result. I gave her a nervous smile. Tried to keep things cool. Said something about not expecting that. She leaned in slightly, didn't blink, and said something along the lines of how she always knows when people are lying. Like she had a radar for it or something. And then just waited. I swear the air in the restaurant felt different after that. Not louder or quieter. Just off. Like the walls leaned in a little. I glanced around. Nobody else seemed to notice what was happening in our booth. It was like we were in a bubble. She asked if I'd ever been dishonest with a girl. Then before I could answer, she said she'd bet I had. I started sweating even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Not to her. Not to anyone lately. But it didn't matter. The way she looked at me made it feel like I was already caught in something. Our food arrived and I was too freaked out to eat. She ate hers like it was any normal Tuesday. She didn't touch the gun again, didn't mention it, didn't even glance at it. But it sat there, right next to her fork. I tried to steer the convo somewhere else. Asked about movies, music, family. She answered everything in this half-smiling, half-studying way. Like every question was her letting me squirm a little more. She told me her mom used to make lasagna every Friday but stopped after her dad disappeared. I asked if he left. She said maybe. Then said disappeared was a better word. I don't know why I stayed. Curiosity? Fear? Both? I told myself I'd finish my plate, then make an excuse and leave. But I barely touched it. After she finished eating, she picked up the gun, wiped it with her napkin, and slipped it back into her purse like it was nothing. Then she smiled at me again. This time it was different. More real. But in a way that made my stomach feel worse. She stood up, said something about how this was fun, and walked off. No hug. No wave. Just left. I stayed in the booth for like 10 minutes after that, just replaying the whole night. The way she talked. The way she watched me. The way she brought a loaded weapon to a date and acted like it was part of her outfit. I reported her on the app. Blocked her. Deleted it after. But she still pops into my head now and then. Especially when I meet someone new. I wonder if I'd even know if I was being watched like that again. If I'd recognize the signs. Or if maybe that's the kind of person who never shows them twice. I was already having second thoughts before I even sat down. The guy showed up 15 minutes late with no text. Said traffic was bad but didn't say sorry, didn't ask if I'd been waiting long. Just pointed to the two-seater near the window like he owned the place. I should have left right then, but I told myself to give it a chance. One drink. That's all. The place was this strange cocktail bar inside an old cinema. Not like a cool vintage cinema. More like a shut-down theater someone reopened without changing the carpet or fixing the flickering sign outside. The booths had these weird low walls, and it made it hard to see anything beyond your own table. Kinda felt like you were boxed in. But I liked the vibe enough to not be put off. At first. He sat down and leaned back like he'd been waiting for me all day. Didn't even look at the menu. I asked if he'd been here before and he just said something like, "I know good places." That sort of vague confidence that's either charming or annoying depending on your mood. We ordered drinks. I went with something simple, gin and tonic with cucumber. He ordered this bright green thing that came in a martini glass and immediately started explaining the ingredients like he'd made it himself. I just nodded along while watching the bartender in the mirror behind him. The first few minutes were fine. He asked basic stuff, siblings, pets, jobs. I kept my answers short and light. I could already tell he liked to talk about himself more anyway. I figured it'd burn out after the first drink. Then I noticed my purse was gone. I'd placed it on the booth seat next to me like I always do. And now it wasn't there. I thought maybe it slipped under the table or behind me, but after a quick scan I couldn't see it anywhere. My heart started picking up. I leaned over and started feeling around under the booth, between the seats and even on the floor. It was nowhere. I sat back up and told him I lost my bag. He just smiled. Not like, "Oh, that sucks," but like he already knew. Then, still grinning, he said something about how I shouldn't be in a rush to leave, followed by this half laugh, like it was supposed to be a joke. He said he moved it, just to make sure we didn't cut the night short. That's when everything changed. It was like a switch. I didn't laugh. I didn't smile. I just asked him, direct, serious, where it was. He didn't budge. Just kept looking at me, then gestured toward my half-full glass and said something like, "Finish your drink first." He wasn't laughing anymore. Still smiling, but it had dropped a few degrees into something else. Something smug. I felt my stomach twist. That heavy, gross feeling like when you leave a store and realize your phone's missing and your pockets are empty. But this was worse. My keys were in there. My ID. My money. My everything. I looked around. The layout of the bar made it hard to flag someone without getting up. And even that didn't feel simple anymore. If I stood up, would he stop me? Would he block me in? The booth was tight. His leg was stretched out, tapping the side of mine like it had been there the whole time. I asked again, firmer, this time more serious. Still calm, but enough to let him know I wasn't playing. He raised his hands like he was surrendering and said he'd give it back in a minute. Just one more drink, then he'd hand it over. Said I seemed tense and that it was just a joke. But I couldn't relax. I wasn't touching that drink again. My throat had gone dry and every sound in the bar started feeling too far away. It felt like everyone else had disappeared, even though I could still hear glasses clinking and low music in the background. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't even find my voice. I scanned the booth again. The floor. The seat. The space between us. Nothing. I leaned sideways, trying to peek behind his legs without making it obvious. That's when I saw the edge of the strap, tucked under his side of the booth. I didn't even think. I just reached for it. He grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to make my body freeze. Still smiling. He said something quiet and slow about how I should just chill, enjoy the moment, and stop being dramatic. And the way he said it, like this was a scene he played out before. Like I was just following some script he already knew. I pulled my hand back. I didn't respond. I stood up. He tried to say something else, probably another stupid line to make it sound less creepy, but I didn't care. I just walked around the table, grabbed my purse, and backed away. He stayed seated, watching me like I was the one being unreasonable. I bolted for the door. Didn't look back. Didn't pay. Didn't say a word to anyone. I walked straight out into the night air, clutching my bag like it was gold. I half expected him to follow me, but he didn't. Maybe he was waiting for a different reaction. Maybe he liked watching people panic. I don't know. All I know is I walked 5 blocks to a petrol station, ordered a cab to a friend's place, and deleted that app the second I sat down on the curb. The weirdest part? The next morning I had a message from him. It just said, "You forgot to finish your drink." Blocked. The date started off way too smooth and I should have known something was off. I met her on Bumble. She messaged first, asked what my worst habit was, then sent a selfie with a pizza box on her head. I thought she was quirky. Like chaotic in a cute way. Her bio said something dumb like I test people for fun, but I didn't take it seriously. Thought it was just a weird quote or some edgy line to stand out. We agreed to meet at this loud, trendy bar that just opened near the riverfront. Neon lights, industrial pipes everywhere, tables made from recycled doors or something. It was packed, music thumping, and everything smelled like orange zest and vodka. I was early. She was exactly on time. She showed up in this oversized black hoodie and ripped jeans, hair in 2 low buns, big silver earrings, and this weird glint in her eye like she was already 2 steps ahead of me. I smiled, stood up, she gave me a quick once-over and nodded. Not a compliment. Just a nod. Like, "You'll do." We got seated at this high top near the bar, squished between 2 other loud couples. I could barely hear her at first, but she leaned in close and talked like we were already halfway through the date. Told me I looked different from my photos, but not in a bad way. Said my energy was readable. I had no clue what that meant, so I just laughed like it was a compliment. We ordered drinks. She got this bitter cocktail with jalapenos in it. I stuck with a cider. While we waited, she asked if I was good at reading people. I said I tried to be. She raised one eyebrow, didn't blink, just stared for a second, then said something like, "We'll see." Our drinks landed. I picked mine up, took a sip, and literally mid-sentence she stood up without saying anything. I figured she was going to the bathroom or to ask the bartender something. I kept sipping and scrolling through the drink menu again, pretending to look chill. A few minutes passed. I looked over toward the bar. That's when I saw her. She was standing in front of this tall guy in a green jacket. He looked like someone off a tattoo magazine cover. Sleeves, rings, short bleach blonde buzz cut. She leaned in and kissed him. Full-on kiss. No hesitation. Just kissed him. Then she turned around and started walking back like she just tied her shoe. I was frozen. She sat back down across from me, picked up her drink, and smiled like we were picking up where we left off. I didn't say anything. I was too thrown off to even form a sentence. My brain was trying to figure out if that just happened or if I was hallucinating. She finally looked at me again and casually said she wanted to see how I'd react under pressure. Like she was testing my patience, my confidence. Like I was some game piece. I asked if that guy was her ex or something. She said no. She didn't even know him. Just picked him. Said it was about energy. Said I passed the first part of the night by not being boring, and she wanted to raise the difficulty. It didn't feel like flirting. It felt like being messed with. I forced a laugh. Tried to play it off. Told her that was wild. She leaned back and asked if I was mad. I wasn't mad. I was confused. And uncomfortable. But the way she was looking at me, like she was taking notes, I didn't want to give her the reaction she wanted. So I just said I was chill. She nodded again. Same nod as before. Like, noted. We kept drinking. Her energy never settled. It was like she was always watching me react instead of actually talking. She'd throw in random curveball questions like, "If you could delete one memory forever, would you?" Or, "What's the worst lie you've ever told a girl?" I answered them, kinda. But mostly I was just writing it out now. Something about the whole thing felt off, but I didn't want to cause a scene or make myself a story for her friends. I figured I'd finish my drink, wrap things up, and leave with whatever dignity I had left. Then she pulled out her phone, opened the camera, snapped a photo of me while I was mid-sentence. No warning, no flash, just click. I asked why. She said she always documents first reactions. Then she opened her notes app and started typing while looking at me. Said she was writing a short review. I leaned over to try and see it and she turned the screen away and laughed. Told me not to be nosy. Said I'd see it if I made it to the second date. I wasn't planning on a second date. I wasn't even planning on staying another 10 minutes. I downed the rest of my drink and told her I needed to head out early. She looked almost disappointed. Not because I was leaving, but because she didn't get more time to keep playing her little test. She didn't ask me to stay. Didn't ask for my number. Just raised her glass and said I did all right. I walked out of that bar feeling like I'd just been part of a weird psychology study. I kept checking over my shoulder, half expecting her to follow me or post something online with my face in it. I blocked her on everything that night. The next morning, I had a text from a random number. No name. Just one sentence. You blinked too much when I kissed the other guy. Interesting. I still don't know how she got my number. I didn't even want to go. It was one of those setups where your coworker won't stop hyping someone up like they're God's gift, and after 2 weeks of dodging it, I finally said fine. I just wanted to shut her up. She said he was tall, had a good job, was emotionally intelligent, which literally means nothing, and that he'd take me somewhere nice. We met outside this rooftop place. Not 5-star, but trendy enough you needed a reservation. They had those tall heaters glowing red even though the weather was mild. The kind of place where couples posed for Instagram before the food even arrived. I got there first, of course. Sat on the bench outside, scrolling my phone to kill the nerves. He texted me he was parking and would be 5 minutes. 10 minutes later, he appeared. He smiled, complimented me, pulled out my chair. All the first date manners people write about online. He looked normal. Button-down shirt, clean-shaven, cologne just a little too strong. Not ugly, not hot. Just regular. His voice, though, had this even, practiced tone that made everything sound polite, even if it wasn't. When the waiter came, he asked for a bottle of wine instead of individual drinks. Bold for a first meetup, but fine. I figured we'd each have a glass, talk for an hour, and then part ways. We eased into conversation. Work, music, worst jobs. I told him about the time I dressed as a hot dog for a charity car wash. He laughed. Maybe a little too hard, but I was still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. He talked a lot about books, how people don't read anymore, how he couldn't date someone who didn't understand real literature. Then came the backhanded compliments. Most girls wouldn't get that reference. You're different from what I expected. They sounded flattering on the surface, but they landed wrong. Like he was testing me, dangling bait to see how I'd respond. I finished my first glass. He poured us both another without asking. I wasn't eager, but I let it go. Halfway through the second glass, the shift started. He pivoted the conversation to his past relationships. How women couldn't handle his honesty. How he had high standards. How he hated being tested. Each word felt heavier, like he was drawing invisible lines around me. When he reached for the bottle again, I stopped him. Thanks, but I'm good. I'll just finish this one. I smiled. Kept my tone light. Polite. Non-confrontational. That's when it happened. Something slammed shut in his face. His jaw tightened. His eyes fixed on me with this cold, silent fury. He didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stared, as if I'd insulted him, as if refusing more wine was a crime against his very being. The air thinned. My stomach dropped. And then, without a word, he grabbed his glass and hurled it. It exploded against the wall behind me. The sound was sharp, violent. Wine splattered the brick, glass shards rained down, some grazing my skin. A thin sting bloomed along my neck. The whole patio froze. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. A couple ducked. A waiter flinched so hard he nearly dropped his tray. I sat frozen, heart hammering, ears ringing. And him? He just sat there, breathing slow, heavy. One hand flat on the table, watching me. Not apologizing. Not explaining. Just staring like I was the problem. The waiter rushed over, voice tight with alarm. Are you okay? I forced out a yeah, though my throat was sandpaper. The man across from me, my date, my coworker's golden recommendation, said nothing. His eyes never left me. I couldn't stay. Not even a second longer. I scraped my chair back, the sound shrill against the floor. Grabbed my bag, my phone. The waiter tried to stop me, asked if I wanted to file a report or speak to the manager. I shook my head. I just needed out. As I walked away, I felt his eyes burning into my back. I didn't look. I wouldn't give him that. On the street, I texted my coworker one word, never. An hour later, she called, panicked. She said she couldn't believe it, that she only knew him from group events. He always seemed intense, she admitted, but not like that. I told her I didn't blame her, but she was never to mention me to him again. Not my name, not my face. To erase me from his orbit completely. That night, I discovered a thin cut on my shoulder. Just a line barely bleeding. I stood in front of the mirror staring at it for too long, realizing how close it had been. Inches away from my neck. Inches away from something that would have made the evening more than a story. He never texted. Never called. Didn't even bother with an excuse. as if throwing a glass at someone for declining wine was just normal, routine, like he'd done it before. And that's when it hit me, maybe he had. I don't go on blind dates anymore. Because sometimes emotionally intelligent just means good at pretending until the mask slips. I should have noticed the way she looked at my phone when I put it on the table. It was face down, silent, like always. I don't like interruptions when I'm with someone. I think it's rude. She said she liked that. Said most guys just scroll through Instagram between questions. She seemed impressed. That lasted about 5 minutes. We met through this stupid app that I don't even remember downloading. It asked you dumb questions like, who would you haunt if you were a ghost? And what's something you've never told your parents? She answered every one like it was a dare. I matched with her because she said her guilty pleasure was threatening people with a smile. I thought she was being funny. She picked the place. This artsy-looking cafe that turned into a bar after 6. All the chairs were mismatched and there were old TVs on the shelves playing static on purpose. The drinks came in weird mugs with sarcastic phrases on them, and there was a chalkboard on the bathroom door that just said, "Good luck." She showed up in this bright yellow hoodie with words scribbled on the sleeves in black marker. I couldn't read them all, but one of them said only liars blush. Her hair was tucked under a beanie even though it wasn't cold. She had this kind of jumpy energy, like she was half listening to me and half listening to something else I couldn't hear. We ordered drinks. She didn't ask what I wanted. Just told the barista 2 of the usual, like she was a regular. I didn't even know what the usual was. Ended up being some herbal thing with way too much cinnamon. She talked a lot. About weird stuff. How she once memorized the license plates of every car parked on her street. How she liked watching strangers argue in public to see who cracked first. How people reveal their true personality when they think no one's watching. She said she was good at getting people to slip up. I kept smiling, trying to keep it light. She made me laugh a few times, I'll admit that. But every time she leaned forward, I felt this weird tension in my shoulders, like I had to stay alert. We were about halfway through the drinks when it happened. I was reaching for my glass and she suddenly leaned across the table, grabbed my phone and slipped it into her bag. Just like that. Smooth, fast, like it was part of the conversation. I froze. I thought it was a joke. I laughed a little and held out my hand. She didn't give it back. She zipped her bag up, looked me dead in the face and said I'd get it back if I agreed to go to a second location with her. Not if I wanted to. Not if we were having a good time. She said it like a challenge. Like a rule in a game I didn't know I was playing. I stared at her for a second, thinking maybe I misheard. Maybe she was joking. But she didn't blink. She just tilted her head and waited. Like a dog watching a squirrel. I asked where. She said it was a surprise. I asked again. She just smiled. Said something about trust and energy and testing boundaries. Said people are too attached to their phones anyway. I stayed calm. I asked again. I tried to be firm without being loud. I didn't want to cause a scene. The place wasn't busy, but the barista was nearby, and I didn't know how she'd react if I grabbed her bag. She had her hand resting on it, fingers drumming along the zipper. I told her it wasn't funny, that I had important stuff on there. She said that's exactly why I should come with her. She called it leverage. Said she wanted to see what kind of person I really was. Then asked if I was the type who followed or ran. It wasn't even about the phone anymore. It was about control. I could feel it. I sat back. Tried to think. I asked if I could at least check something on it first. She leaned in like she was considering it, then said no. Said that was part of the test too. That everything was. I asked what would happen if I just walked away. She said nothing. But she wouldn't give the phone back. She said if I left, she'd hold on to it. Maybe go through it. Maybe not. She wasn't sure yet. At that point, my legs were bouncing under the table. My heart was pounding, but my face stayed still. I didn't want to react how she wanted. I was trying to stay ahead of her, even though she'd already changed the rules. I told her I'd go. Just needed to grab my coat first. It was hanging by the back door on a hook. She watched me stand. I moved slow. Kept my eyes on her. She didn't move. Just sipped her drink and watched. I grabbed my coat, walked toward the door and bolted. Didn't look back. Just sprinted out and around the corner. Pulled out my backup phone from my inside pocket, an old one I keep for work stuff, and called my brother. Told him to meet me with my spare keys and help me lock out all my accounts. I remotely wiped my main phone on the spot. 2 hours later, I got a text from an unknown number. Just said, "You failed the test." I didn't reply. I wasn't even dressed like it was a date. It was supposed to be chill. His profile said he liked quirky diners, and I figured we'd be splitting fries and talking about weird movies or something. I wore jeans, an old hoodie, and didn't even bother with makeup. I almost bailed when I couldn't find parking, but I told myself to just get it over with. He was already inside when I walked in. Sitting upright, hands folded on the table, staring straight ahead like he was meditating or waiting for a court hearing. He was wearing a full-on collared shirt, tucked into jeans with a belt that had his initials on the buckle. His hair was combed in this stiff side part like a cartoon dad. He waved when he saw me but didn't smile until I sat down. And even then it felt stiff. We were in this retro-style place with checkered floors and jukebox music playing on loop. The booths had red leather seats that stuck to the back of your legs. Everyone was either on a casual date or with family. Nothing serious. We ordered food. He picked something big off the menu, steak and fries with all the sides. I got a sandwich. He asked if I wanted to split dessert later. I said maybe. That somehow kicked off a whole rant about how dessert says everything about a person's future. I don't even remember the logic of it, but it ended with him saying he always saves room for what he values most. Then he stared at me like I was supposed to reply with something deep. I just smiled and took a sip of my soda. The small talk was awkward. He talked a lot about how people don't respect real commitment anymore. Said dating had become transactional. He kept glancing at other tables like we were being watched. At one point he asked me how many kids I wanted. I laughed because I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. He didn't laugh back. I tried to shift the vibe. Asked about his favorite movie. He said he didn't watch fiction because it was dishonest. I was halfway through chewing when he asked what my love language was. He kept trying to steer the conversation toward long-term stuff, and I kept steering it back toward anything else. Hobbies, music, the weird wallpaper. I even asked him about the belt. He said it was a family thing. Then said he hoped someday I'd understand that. So yeah, things were already weird. Then the food came. We were about halfway through the meal when he suddenly stood up. I thought maybe he was going to the bathroom or something, but nope. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a plastic ring, like one of those colorful toy ones from a vending machine, and dropped to one knee right next to the booth. The entire restaurant turned. I didn't even have time to react. My brain couldn't catch up. He was looking up at me with this hopeful look. Not playful. Not jokey. Serious. He held the ring out like he was proposing for real. Like the music should have cut and there should have been rose petals or something. My heart started pounding. My stomach turned cold. I told him to get up. Quietly. Calmly. I tried to laugh it off. Tried to ask what he was doing. He didn't budge. He just held the ring higher. Then said something about fate. About how he felt something the moment I walked in. That I got it. That I wasn't like the others. When I told him no, again quiet, trying not to escalate, his whole expression dropped. The smile vanished. His eyebrows pulled tight and his jaw clenched. Then he shouted. Loud. The kind of loud that cracks in the back of someone's throat. He shouted, "Then why'd you even come here?" Every head in the restaurant turned. Everyone froze. Even the waitress holding a tray near our booth just stopped mid-step. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, face red, pulse in my ears, wishing the booth would swallow me. He stood up, still holding the ring, still breathing hard. He stared at me like I'd betrayed him, like I'd promised something just by showing up. His face went through a million expressions at once. Hurt, angry, embarrassed, desperate. I could see it building in his body like a storm. I mumbled something, probably that I had to go. I grabbed my bag and slid out of the booth. As I stood up, he reached for my hand fast. Not aggressive exactly, but desperate. I pulled away. A guy from another table stood up then. Some stranger. Just hovered nearby watching us. The guy noticed. That made him snap out of whatever mood he was in. He dropped the toy ring on the table and sat back down like nothing happened. I walked straight out. Didn't look back. My legs were shaking by the time I got to the car. I sat in the driver's seat with the door locked and stared out at the restaurant lights for a minute, trying to calm down. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a text. There wasn't one. Not that night. But 2 days later I got a DM. Just a photo. It was the toy ring. Sitting on what looked like a velvet pillow with a caption that said, "Still waiting. Blocked." It was supposed to be one of those low-stress first dates, iced coffee and a walk kind of thing. Neutral ground. Nothing that would make me check my bank account the next morning. But she wanted sushi. Real sushi, she said. Not the plastic box from Tesco, not the conveyor belt chains. She texted me the name of this small, tucked-away spot I'd never even heard of, wedged between a hair salon and a bike repair shop. When I walked in, I realized immediately this wasn't coffee date territory. 10 tables. Dim lighting. No music. Minimalist plates that looked like they'd been stolen from an art gallery. The kind of place where you pay 20 quid for a bite-sized roll and pretend to appreciate the presentation. I already knew I was going to be broke for the rest of the week. She showed up 5 minutes late in a loud floral dress and these massive sunglasses that she didn't take off even though we were indoors. She plopped into the seat across from me like we were already mid-conversation. I barely got a hi out before she was frowning at the chair. "These chairs look slimy," she said. "Don't you think?" I didn't, but I laughed politely. At first, I thought she was funny. Kind of extra sure, but in a way that kept the air moving. She talked fast, ordered fast, and laughed at her own jokes like she didn't need me to. For the first 20 minutes, I convinced myself it was fine. Maybe this was just her vibe, loud, colorful, a little unfiltered. Better than awkward silence, right? Then came the turn. We were halfway through the second roll when she brought up past relationships. Heavy for a first date, but I played along. I made some vague comment about how I'd learned a lot from mine, how I valued honesty, the usual neutral stuff. She leaned in, lowered her voice a little, and said, "My ex is still around." I wasn't sure what that meant. Still around like friends? Still texting? Still living together? I opened my mouth to ask, but before I could, she hit me with a question so personal it made me sit back in my chair. Not rude exactly, but the kind of thing you discuss months in, not between bites of edamame. I tried to give her a thoughtful answer. Halfway through, she cut me off. "Hold on. I want to try something." She pulled out her phone. At first, I thought she was Googling something or maybe showing me a meme. But no. She went straight to her call log. Scrolled right to the top. She tapped a name. Put it on speaker. Looked at me with this little smirk and said, "Watch this." Before I could even process, a man's voice came through the speaker. Her ex. She didn't even say hello. She just asked him the exact same question she'd asked me. I sat there frozen, chopsticks dangling in my hand. The ex sounded confused, but he answered anyway. She nodded like a game show host listening to a contestant. Then she turned those sunglasses on me. "Your turn again." I actually looked around the room for cameras. I'm not exaggerating. I scanned the corners for hidden lenses, glanced at the couple 2 tables over to see if they were suppressing laughter. Nothing. Just quiet clinking of cutlery, soft jazz from a dusty speaker, and me caught in the weirdest date of my life. Her eyes didn't move until I gave an answer. So I did. Shorter than before. Less thought out. My brain was too busy screaming to give her anything real. She compared us like judges on a reality show. Said he sounded more natural, and that I seemed nervous under pressure. Then she grinned. Round 2. And just like that, she lobbed another question across the table. Even more personal this time. Something that felt invasive, like she was peeling me open on the spot. She asked him. Asked me. Asked him again. She laughed when our answers overlapped. At one point, she actually said, "Points go to him for honesty." I wanted to flip the table. Not at the guy, he sounded as trapped as I was, but at her smug tone like we were both contestants auditioning for her attention. I pushed my plate away. "I'm not playing anymore." She rolled her eyes, told him to hang up, and muttered, "Dramatic." Then she turned back to me like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just put her ex on speakerphone in the middle of a first date. "It's just a test," she said. "To see who knows me better." I reminded her that I had literally met her an hour ago. She laughed. Exactly. No apology. No hint of embarrassment. Just another bite of sushi and a monologue about how people are too sensitive, how everyone wants vulnerability, but can't handle it when it shows up in weird forms. I sat there for 5 more minutes, mostly out of shock. Wondering if she'd snap again. Wondering if she thought this was romantic. Then she asked if I was ready for round 3. That was it. I stood, dropped a 20 on the table, and walked out. She didn't chase me. Didn't text. But at midnight, my phone buzzed with a DM request. It was from her. No words. Just a poll. The question, who gave better answers? The 2 options, me or the ex. I blocked her on the spot. But every so often I think about it. About her voice, her laughter, the way she leaned forward like she was holding cue cards. About how casual she was in humiliating 2 people at once, as if it was just dinner theater and we were her players. And I wonder if the ex was really surprised. Or if he'd played this game before.